Good evening. This is Tamara Sweeney from Love Dominates. Choose love over hate and compassion over judgment in every decision you make. Today, we have a guest from Maine. Her name is Heidi Love, and she has written a book. I'm going to let her explain it, but this is called Knowing Acts. I'm going to put this up here so you can see that. And Heidi is... can I just say, is going to tell her story. She was sexually assaulted at 11 years old, and I'm just going to let her talk about her experience and how she rose above this horrible event.
Thank you, Tamara.
Thank you for coming.
I was raped and a survivor of attempted murder at 11 and tried to run away quite a few times. And at 15, I was hiding out in the library and I saw this National Geographic article on Gauguin. And I saw all these pictures of these amazing women in French Polynesia and a waterfall, and I decided that's where I'm going to live. I'm going to sail to French Polynesia, and I'm going to live there forever, and I'll have plenty of food to eat. And it took me quite a few years, but I actually did it. And through the process, I learned a lot about the story that I was carrying inside and how to transcend the trauma. And so I put out this book, which is a customizable workbook on rising above the traumas that you have, and it's a calming practice for emotional balance. Basically, when I left on my sailboat, it was a 5-year, 12,000 nautical mile journey.
Wow.
And when I would get into life-threatening storms, I had an issue. When I left, I thought I was escaping my past, and I was escaping my assailant. And what I found was, when I was really afraid, the ghost of my assailant seemed to appear on the boat. And I had PTSD, full-blown PTSD episodes and dissociations on the boat, and had to learn how to deal with them, or I wasn't going to make it, because I was very suicidal. I wanted to just fall overboard in the middle of the ocean. And so I learned some things to deal with my own trauma. And then when I returned, I realized some of these things might be helpful for others. So I put out this book in case it might help others.
So tell us the time period, because you said you were 11, and then at 15 you saw that magazine. So what year is this?
So I didn't leave until I was 55. So all of these years, I sort of carried this silent story inside of me, and I thought I was supposed to get over it, and I didn't get over it, and for me, it's different for everyone. It's everybody has their own personal journey, but for me, it wasn't get overable, and I had to learn to rise above it, transcend it. I left when I was 55, and I spent my 60th birthday near the Bay of Virgins, which is where, in French Polynesia, which is where I wanted to go when I was 15. Yeah. So my whole what I try to do is help anyone that wants to rise above their trauma and live bold dreams. That's my
You're
passion.
Empowering people.
Passion.
For me, this is a really important story, because this was in the 60s, you said, early 60s to 67.
Right.
And back then, this is the generational, I don't want to say curse, generational traumas that are going on, that back then everyone was quiet and no one said anything. And you were, I'm sure, embarrassed or shamed. Or whatever, which you shouldn't be, because it's not your fault.
Shame.
But I think you held that in for such a long time, And then the sailing, actually the sailing was your freedom. You know, you felt safe. And then you were triggered again when like a heavy storm came or a big wave came. And I mean, explain that more. Explain how did you survive the trigger points? Because we have a lot of children too in our situation with parental alienation. Certain trigger words that we say, you know, put them into a trauma. You know, so how do you rise above that trauma?
Well, first I want to say that even though in the 60s or even before with my parents and grandparents, our stories were silenced. I mean, they're still silenced all the time. And people have certain levels. It's the onion, and you might tell a piece of your story and another piece of your story. For me, I thought if I didn't say anything, it would sort of go away. And I think wounds that aren't attended to, they fester. And the longer you go, the more they fester.
Sure.
For me, when I was in scary situations at sea, big waves coming over, there's a physical thing that happens in the amygdala of your brain, which doesn't know time, it just knows fear. And so I would have triggers, flashbacks that would bring me back to being age 11. And if I didn't do this practice that I learned how to do, I would feel worthless, I would feel ashamed, and I would just I would become suicidal. So in order to stay on the boat, I had to learn how to go from, you can't stop the flashbacks. You can't stop the amygdala. But what you can do is, as soon as you see a flashback, or if you feel you're spiraling down, we often know we're spiraling down. If you are able to know that you're spiraling down or have a initial flashback, to have a practice that you do automatically. Because before the practice, for me, I'd see I'd hear these triggers or see these triggers, and it would make me feel worthless and ashamed, and I just want to be suicidal. So I had to instead, if I see the trigger or hear the trigger or I start spiraling down, I automatically do things. I make a pact with myself to automatically do things, certain acts, and until I become present again. Because the trauma makes you live often in the past and the future. You're in the past about what happened, you're in the future afraid for your life. And mindfulness practices, this is a customizable workbook, but mindfulness practices are about trying to stay in the present until you can get help.
Yeah, that's that's a strong statement when you say you can remember everything. You have a flashback at 11 years old. And that trauma, it just proves the behaviors. One bad person does one bad act, and another person could be destroyed the rest of their life because of that selfishness, you know what I mean, or that need that they needed. And I mean, to actually have that visual flashback, that to me is haunting. Actually you should explain some of the acts of what you go through to help get rid of that fear.
But first I want to say, I believe that one act of violence can impact multiple generations.
Sure.
I also believe that one act, a singular act of kindness, can impact multiple generations. You can break the chain, and that's important to keep in mind too. And that's part of, again, rising above it. I have a lot of different acts. Some work for some people, some work for others, and different resources. But one of the ones that I like is just developing a playlist of all of these songs that make you feel powerful or calm, or whatever kind of playlist you want. And you make that, and just promise yourself, okay, if I've just gone into my room, I'm really spiraling down, I put the playlist on. I've made a pact with myself, I put the playlist on. And I find even creating a playlist when you're in spiraling down is a better thing to do than wallowing in this place where you're feeling worthless or ashamed. So one of them is and I have several. There's free downloads on my website, and one
Please
of this,
mention your website so they know.
HeidiLoveAuthor.com, or there's also knowingacts.com. And another thing that I do, there's breathing exercises in here, and I have a shirt I wear. It's a Rocky shirt, and it says "Love wins," and it makes me feel strong. And I do
Love
haiku.
does win. I need that
And
shirt. I'm from
You
Philly,
do.
and
There you go.
I say love wins all the time. It's a hashtag.
And having a box, a tote, or a box of things, different exercises. And some of these exercises you might love, some of them you don't. That's why it's customizable. I have the way that I do it, and then a blank page for people to put in the way they want to do it. So, because again, everybody's journey is different, and as you start your practice, you can learn which things work best for you.
Sure.
And try to break the circuit from when you're triggered to when you're present again. And you can. For me, it was really helpful to get professional help, and I was really lucked out in terms of one of the people that helped me. She climbed to near the death zone of Mount Everest. She did all these breathing exercises.
We must all go through that because we're adventurous people after a trauma event. You know what I mean? I guess you're testing life limits.
And for her, she said, get a piece of clothing to wear that when you're scared or you're doing something scary, put it on to give yourself courage. She has a bra she wore on Mount Everest, and she said, when I have to do something scary or if I'm not feeling good, I put this bra on. Well, I have my Love Rocky shirt on, and that just makes me feel a little bit higher, a little bit rise above it. And I do think that there's a lot of people that have had horrendous stories. They carry around these horrendous stories, and somehow through their own personal journey they've been able to rise above that. And that's wherever you are on your personal journey, that's okay. Honor where you are on your personal journey, and find people that surround yourself with love, and people that will support your journey.
Exactly.
And know that you're not alone.
Yeah, no, that's I through this whole my situation was different, but for me, what made me get through my trauma was I journaled, and I didn't necessarily read everything I wrote until like years later. And when I read it years later, I was like, wow, like I didn't realize I was being gaslit. I was being just targeted. Your family against you, everybody against you. And just like you said, it's so important if you are surrounding yourself with people that are negative or are beating you down on your ideas, like not always agreeing or saying you're ridiculous or whatever. You need to get out and reconnect with new people, because people should be encouraging you, not bringing you down on your ideas. If they're your ideas and that's your dream, then you should go for it. You shouldn't feel shamed. You shouldn't feel odd or different or weird. If that's your passion, then go for it. So I really, that's a key point. Surround yourself with love. Surround yourself with people that are like-minded, because then you don't feel so out of place or different or shamed or, have that feeling of rejection or unworthiness. By the way, before I even go any further, every human is worthy of love and respect. So if you're in a situation right now and that's where you feel, please go to Facebook or go to any of these groups and whatever situation you went through and try to call someone or contact someone, and just having someone hear your story, which you can tell how that one woman you spoke to, because it's so important for someone just to sit there and listen to your story. That makes the person feel so much better that actually somebody's listening to me right now. Because in most of these situations, people will say, "Oh, that's not true. You're crazy."
Or get over it.
Yeah, get over
Get
it.
over it.
That's
I'm
a
here
horrible
to
statement.
say that after from 11 to age 55, for me, it's not get overable. I had to learn to rise above it. After a dozen counselors, after drugs, after so many 12,000 nautical miles. it for me, it's not get overable. It's a matter of rising above it and transcending it. And you do that, like you were saying, through love and not and that's important.
What about forgiveness? Were you able to? That's a hard one, because they say to pray on your enemies. Have forgiveness for people that have harmed you. How do you conquer that?
I think that it's everybody has their own, again, personal journey, and one person that was in the midst of my trauma, I've been able to forgive, and that's been a good thing. But I think again that everybody has their own way to deal with it, and the important thing is to honor what feels right inside you. You have to honor who you are, and sometimes it's hard to even know. I remember at one point not even knowing who I was.
Sure.
And it was really helpful for me, again, to work with counselors and to really remember who I was and who I am, and develop become the person I wanted to be too.
So you're saying at 11 years old you were still a child, and that person kind of stripped that from you, because you then became, at 11 years old, I don't even think I knew what sex was or anything, you know what I mean? So you went from child to
at 11 I was confident, I was an A student, and by 12 I felt worthless, I was alone, I was on my own.
Because you couldn't talk to anyone about it.
No, and I was living on alone. But that's another story. That's another whole story.
No, that's okay. Well, why don't you tell the story, because I kind of cut you off, about the woman who reached out to you, the phone call, and how important it was just by you taking that phone call.
I was at a conference, and I became friends with a woman who had survived severe assault, and although all assault is severe, had survived assault. And I had followed her on Facebook. She was in London, I was in Maine in the US, and one night I opened Facebook, and she had written, "I'm in a really bad place." So I immediately did a personal message and said, "I'm not a professional, but I know how to listen. If you want to talk, I can listen." And so we talked for hours and hours and hours, and I recommended that she get some professional help. She was she was in a bad emotional place. And I said, "I can tell you what some of the things that helped me." And I explained how to do the playlist. And I said, "Would you do that tonight?" Because a lot of the books that are about domestic violence and PTSD and rape, a lot of them are thick, heavy textbooks that are long-term
just terminology.
And to just go into one, if you're in a bad place, can be triggering by themselves. And I said, stay away from that. If you want, you can hear about one of my acts, which was the playlist. I sent her a song, and I sent her a list, and by the time morning came, she had a playlist on Spotify, which you can find if you go to my website or my list. And she said she had an appointment with a counselor, and 9 months later she said it was life-saving. So I thought, if I could help that person, maybe I can help another person, and that's why I did that.
And that's what this is all about. You're saving lives. You're basically saving lives just by listening to someone that is struggling and going through some kind of trauma. So I just want to make sure everyone tries to pick up this book. How can you tell them how they can pick this book up? Is it in Amazon? Or?
Yep, it's on Amazon.
Okay.
You can, if you go to HeidiLoveAuthor.com or knowingacts.com, you will see all about my story. There's some acts that are free and as well, and you can order it from there. And also, I should say that it's got gorgeous illustrations from an artist who has survived much in the way of trauma and has risen above her trauma by creating this beautiful art. It's just really pretty things.
That's
pretty
good.
art pieces that are also art can be very healing for people also.
Nature,
art. She lost her son as a teenager, and so she's really dedicated herself to supporting others with art, and her information is also on my site. So
that's great.
knowingacts.com, or whatever practice helps you. It's not one practice. Whatever way you can start to heal.
Sure. I always try to promote and tell people the one thing you have to do is, I feel anyway, you have to face your own fear. So whatever your fear may be, shame or guilt or whatever, even though it's not your fault, whatever it is, you need to face that fear. And once you face that fear, I think you can rise above and become empowering, because you came, full circle. So in other words, like, even in my own situation, I had different traumas, different fears, like my kids would never come back. So once you deal with that, and you deal with those emotions, those feelings, everything, you can just rise above. Everybody has their own journey. Everyone's going through their own path, and you just have to conquer certain dimensions, I call them. They're like each dimension to rise above. And that's what's really important, because all of you are worthy of love and worthy of respect. So thank you very much, Heidi.
Thank you
for giving us time today.
To everyone.
Yes. And this was a great interview. Who would have thought? Here we are out in Panama, a different country, and we're on the same dock, and she told me about her story, and here I am.
And I'm on my way back to the Bay of Virgins.
That's
times 2.
Yeah, that's going to be pretty big, a big event. All right, well, tune in to Love Dominates. I'll talk to you guys soon.